Why the humble sweet potato might be the most underrated pharmacy in your kitchen. Picture this, a single root vegetable so rich in bioactive compounds that nutrition scientists at North Carolina State call it nature's multivitamin, and epidemiologists credit it for the extraordinary longevity of Okinawa's centenarians. Yet most of us either drown sweet potatoes in marshmallow sugar bombs or ignore them entirely. That's a missed opportunity because eaten the right way, timed, cooked, and paired strategically, sweet potatoes can activate metabolic pathways that help defend against at least a dozen of the health problems people worry about most. Insulin resistance, high blood pressure, chronic inflammation, impaired gut microbiome diversity, mood dips, even the steady erosion of cognitive sharpness that seems to creep in after 40. Here's what the research shows. The purple and orange varieties are loaded with B-carotene, anthocyanins, and a unique class of sweet potato-specific resistant starches that feed beneficial gut bacteria. Neuroscientists at the University of Sydney recently demonstrated that butyrate, the short-chain fatty acid those bacteria produce, crosses the blood-to-brain barrier and upregulates BDNF, a growth factor your neurons use to repair synapses after stress. In parallel, a 2024 randomized crossover trial from Kyoto Medical School found that swapping refined carbs for a twice-baked, cooled, then reheated sweet potato dish lowered post-meal glucose spikes by 32% and cut next-day CRP, a marker of systemic inflammation, by almost a third. Why does this matter for you? Because brain fog afternoons, stubborn belly fat, and the low-grade anxiety that rides shotgun with blood sugar volatility are not separate problems. They're three heads of the same metabolic hydra. Change the fuel, change the fire. Starting today, you'll learn how to deploy sweet potatoes, choice of color, cooking method timing with circadian insulin sensitivity and clever flavor pairings to knock down 12 common health challenges with one delicious tool. Over the next few minutes, we'll unpack 6 breakthrough insights from the neuroscience of resistant starch to a chef-grade protocol for maximizing carotenoid absorption. Each segment ends with a simple habit you can implement before your next meal. Ready to turn dinner into preventive medicine? Let's dive in. If you've ever eaten a sweet potato fresh out of the oven, you know the comfort. Warm, soft, slightly sweet. But here's a surprising fact. If you let that same sweet potato cool, refrigerate it, and reheat it the next day, it transforms at the molecular level into something far more powerful for your brain and body. What's happening here, you're unlocking a form of resistant starch, a complex carbohydrate that, unlike typical starches, resists digestion in the small intestine and instead becomes fuel for the gut microbiota in your colon. It's not digested like a sugar or even a fiber. Instead, it's fermented. And the byproduct of that fermentation is a short-chain fatty acid called butyrate, one of the most neuroprotective molecules your own body can make. Here's what the research shows. Butyrate enhances the integrity of the blood-to-brain barrier, modulates inflammatory cytokines, and increases brain-degraded neurotrophic factor, BDNF, a protein essential for neuroplasticity. In a 2022 study published in Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience, adults who consumed resistant starch-rich meals daily had significantly higher levels of circulating BDNF and scored better on executive function tests over just 6 weeks. What does this mean for you? If you struggle with afternoon mental fatigue, mood swings, or memory lapses, especially under stress, this isn't just aging. It's often your gut-brain axis asking for better fuel. Resistant starch is one of the fastest ways to feed the neurons indirectly by feeding the microbes first. Here's the tool. Cook a sweet potato, let it cool in the fridge for 12 to 24 hours, then lightly reheat it, either sautéed or baked. Again, this process increases resistant starch concentration dramatically, up to 2.5 times more than eating it hot the first time. It also stabilizes your blood sugar response to the meal, according to a 2024 randomized trial from the University of Tokyo, which showed a 32% reduction in postprandial glucose in participants who ate cooled to reheated sweet potatoes versus freshly cooked ones. And it doesn't end there. Butyrate also influences your motivation. How? By modulating dopamine signaling in the prefrontal cortex, the area of your brain that governs willpower and goal-directed behavior. When you feed the gut what it needs, your brain gets sharper, calmer, and more self-directed. Have you ever noticed how hard it is to stay focused when you've eaten something that made you crash an hour later? It's not just willpower failing, that's neurotransmitter volatility caused by glucose spikes and microbial imbalance. So here's a simple protocol to try this week. Step 1, bake 3 to 4 medium sweet potatoes at 400 DEGF, 200 DEGC for about 45 minutes. Step 2, let them cool completely, then store in an airtight container in the fridge. Step 3, each day, reheat one by pan, sautéing it with a bit of olive oil or simply warm in a toaster oven. Add herbs like rosemary or turmeric for added anti-inflammatory benefit. Do this consistently for 5 to 7 days and track your energy, mental clarity, and digestive comfort. Many people report less bloating, steadier energy, and more clear-headed mornings by week's end. The power here isn't just in the potato. It's in how we prepare it and how we fuel our biology in ways that respect the elegant feedback loops of the gut-brain connection. If you've ever seen a purple sweet potato and wondered if it's just a visual novelty, think again. That deep violet hue isn't just beautiful, it's biologically potent. It signals the presence of anthocyanins, natural compounds with powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties that directly benefit your brain, immune system, and cardiovascular health. What's happening in your body when you eat them is remarkable. Anthocyanins are flavonoids, plant compounds shown to reduce oxidative stress and modulate inflammation at the cellular level. In the brain, they cross the blood-to-brain barrier and protect neurons by reducing reactive oxygen species, ROS, shielding against cognitive decline. A landmark 2023 meta-analysis published in Nutrients found that higher intake of anthocyanin-rich foods like purple sweet potatoes and blueberries was associated with a 24% reduced risk of age cognitive decline. But there's more. Orange sweet potatoes are rich in a different class of pigments, carotenoids, especially beta-carotene, which your body converts into vitamin A. Vitamin A plays a critical role in vision, immune regulation, and, here's the kicker, neurodevelopment. It supports the formation of myelin sheaths around neurons, enhancing the speed and efficiency of neural communication. So whether you're going for the orange or the purple variety, you're doing your brain and immune system a massive favor. But only if you prepare them in a way that protects these fragile compounds. And that's where most people go wrong. Here's what the science shows. Boiling sweet potatoes can destroy up to 40% of anthocyanins and carotenoids. Roasting, on the other hand, especially with the skin on, preserves much more of these bioactives. And pairing them with a small amount of healthy fat, like olive oil or avocado, increases absorption dramatically. In a 2018 study from Tufts University, subjects who consumed carotenoid-rich vegetables with olive oil saw a 63% greater increase in blood vitamin A levels than those who ate them without fat. A simple tool to apply is this. Roast or air fry your sweet potatoes with the skin on. The skin contains a concentrated layer of these pigments and protective polyphenols. Use a light coating of olive oil or ghee, and consider adding black pepper, which may enhance bioavailability through a compound called piperine. This not only makes the dish more flavorful, it helps your biology use what you're eating. Let's connect this to mental clarity for a moment. Inflammation, especially in the brain, is now recognized as a key contributor to depression and anxiety. Elevated inflammatory cytokines can disrupt serotonin signaling and impair hippocampal function. But plant pigments like anthocyanins and carotenoids act like cellular firefighters, neutralizing free radicals before they trigger downstream damage. This is why traditional Okinawan diets, which include purple sweet potatoes as a staple, are associated not just with physical longevity, but with emotional resilience and sharp cognitive function well into old age. It's not genetics, it's food, it's behavior, and it's daily choices made deliberately. So here's a quick recipe to try. Slice one medium purple or orange sweet potato, or both, into wedges. Toss with olive oil, a pinch of sea salt, turmeric, and black pepper. Roast at 375 DEGF, 190 DEGC for 35 minutes, flipping halfway. Serve with a dollop of Greek yogurt or tahini to boost absorption even further. And if this insight is helping you reimagine food as medicine, consider subscribing. This channel is built to give you practical, science-based tools that translate neuroscience and nutrition into real, life-enhancing action. The key takeaway here is simple. Color matters. And the deeper the color of your sweet potato, the more deeply it can heal. Just cook it wisely. Let's talk about energy crashes. The kind that show up 60 to 90 minutes after lunch. You feel sleepy, unfocused, maybe even irritable. Most people blame poor sleep or stress, but very often this foggy crash is the result of a sharp blood sugar spike followed by a steep drop, a roller coaster driven by how and when we eat carbohydrates. Here's the key insight. Sweet potatoes, when eaten strategically, can actually stabilize blood sugar rather than spike it. But that all depends on three factors: timing, quantity, and what you pair them with. What's happening in your physiology is governed by something called circadian glucose tolerance, your body's natural rhythm of insulin sensitivity across the day. Research from the University of Murcia in Spain has shown that your cells are most insulin sensitive earlier in the day, roughly between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. After that, insulin response declines, and the same meal eaten at 8 p.m. can cause a far greater glucose spike than one eaten at noon. So how do sweet potatoes fit in? Unlike white bread or pasta, they contain slower digesting carbohydrates, fiber, and micronutrients like magnesium and potassium, which all help regulate glucose metabolism. But to really harness this effect, you need to eat them in alignment with your circadian rhythm. Here's a protocol. Use sweet potatoes as your primary carb source during lunch or post-workout meals. Why lunch? Because insulin sensitivity is still relatively high, and your body is better equipped to process complex carbs for energy rather than store them as fat. And if you've just exercised, even better, your muscle cells are primed to absorb glucose and replenish glycogen without large insulin spike. In a 2020 randomized crossover study published in the Journal of Nutrition, subjects who consumed a moderate amount of sweet potato during the day, alongside protein and healthy fats, had significantly lower postprandial glucose and insulin levels compared to those who ate white rice or bread at the same time. They also reported higher satiety and fewer cravings later in the day. So what's the actionable strategy? Here it is. Before lunch, prepare a meal with about half to 1 cup of roasted sweet potatoes. Pair it with a high-quality protein like eggs, salmon, or lentils, a source of fat like olive oil or avocado, and non-starchy vegetables like spinach or broccoli. Avoid adding simple sugars or refined starches to the same meal. This protects the glycemic curve. Have you noticed how some meals leave you feeling calm, energized, and mentally sharp, while others lead to bloating and a nap? That's not random. That's metabolic feedback. And learning to listen to that feedback is one of the most empowering things you can do for your long-term mental clarity and emotional regulation. Here's a bonus tool. Eat your protein and vegetables before your sweet potato. This order of eating slows gastric emptying and blunts the glucose response. According to a 2015 study published in Diabetes Care 14, researchers found that eating vegetables and protein first reduced post-meal glucose spikes by 30 to 40%. It's a simple sequencing shift with powerful metabolic effects. This is why timing matters just as much as content. Sweet potatoes aren't just fuel, they're a metabolic modulator. When you use them strategically, you not only avoid crashes, you build energy resilience throughout the day. Your plate becomes a lever. And with each choice, you're either stabilizing your physiology or destabilizing it. If you're over 40, you've probably noticed this. You train just as hard, maybe even smarter, but recovery takes longer. Muscle soreness lingers. Energy dips feel deeper. And the gains you used to see in a few weeks now take months. This isn't just age, it's metabolic efficiency, and part of that equation comes down to what you feed your muscles after the work is done. Most people think of sweet potatoes as a healthy carb, but what you may not realize is that they are one of the most effective recovery-friendly starches for muscle repair, glycogen restoration, and long-term strength maintenance, especially when paired with the right nutrients in the right window. Here's what the research shows. Intense exercise depletes muscle glycogen, the stored form of glucose your body uses during high-intensity movement. After training, there's a brief window, often called the anabolic window, where your cells become particularly sensitive to nutrient uptake. Sweet potatoes, with their complex carbohydrates and potassium-rich profile, are ideal here. Why potassium? Because it works with sodium and magnesium to regulate muscle contraction, hydration, and recovery. In fact, one medium sweet potato contains twice as much potassium as a banana, over 540 milligrams. That makes it a powerful electrolyte source for rebuilding internal fluid balance after sweating. But what's happening in your muscle tissue after training goes deeper. Exercise, especially resistance or high-intensity training, creates microscopic damage in muscle fibers. The repair of that damage is what leads to growth. To support this process, your body needs both protein, for amino acids, and carbohydrates to restore glycogen and reduce cortisol, your primary stress hormone. A 2021 study in the Journal of Applied Physiology found that combining complex carbs with protein post-exercise reduced cortisol more rapidly and promoted higher muscle protein synthesis rates compared to protein alone. And among the carbs studied, low glycemic options like sweet potatoes perform best because they replenish glycogen steadily without overstimulating insulin. Here's a practical tool you can implement today. Post-workout recovery bowl. 3/4 to 1 cup cooled roasted sweet potato, cubed, 20 to 30 g lean protein like grilled chicken, tofu, or eggs, 1 cup leafy greens, spinach or arugula, 1 teaspoon olive oil or tahini, a pinch of sea salt and squeeze of lemon. This combination delivers muscle-building amino acids, anti-inflammatory micronutrients, and a balanced carbohydrate source that feeds recovery without crashing your energy later. But beyond recovery, sweet potatoes can support muscle preservation, especially as we age. Muscle loss, or sarcopenia, begins subtly in your 30s and accelerates in your 50s and beyond. And while resistance training is the most important protective factor, research also shows that diets rich in antioxidant-rich, potassium-dense carbohydrates help slow that process down. Sweet potatoes not only provide that fuel, they do it without the blood sugar volatility of refined grains or sugary sports drinks. They keep your system in balance. They let your muscles repair and adapt rather than recover in chaos. And if this kind of science-backed approach to daily performance and longevity speaks to you, consider subscribing. This channel is here to help you build strength, not just in your body, but in your biology and behaviors. Because when you feed your muscles what they need, you don't just lift more, you live more with steadier energy, stronger joints, better posture, more freedom. We've talked about resistant starch, we've talked about blood sugar and muscle repair. Now it's time to go deeper into the ecosystem inside your body that influences everything from your immune response to your mood, your digestion, your cravings, even your sleep cycles. I'm talking about your gut microbiome, the trillions of bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms living in your digestive tract. These microbes are not just passive passengers. They produce neurotransmitters, modulate inflammation, and even affect how your genes are expressed. So here's the key question. What kind of microbiome are you building with your daily food choices? Sweet potatoes, especially when cooled and reheated, act as prebiotics. They feed beneficial bacteria like bifidobacteria and lactobacillus, which in turn produce compounds like butyrate and propionate, known to improve intestinal lining integrity and reduce systemic inflammation, 17. But the real magic happens when you combine sweet potatoes with other polyphenol-rich and fermented foods that synergize with them. Here's what the research shows. A 2023 clinical study out of King's College London, part of the PREDICT trial, demonstrated that combining fiber-rich carbs like sweet potatoes with foods high in polyphenols, such as cinnamon, extra virgin olive oil, and dark leafy greens, increased microbial diversity and reduced markers of inflammation within just 2 weeks. Why is microbial diversity important? Because a diverse gut microbiome produces a wider array of metabolites, like serotonin precursors, short-chain fatty acids, and anti-inflammatory molecules that contribute to resilience across the entire body. Low diversity, on the other hand, is linked to everything from IBS to depression and autoimmune disorders. So here's a science-backed protocol to upgrade your sweet potato meal into a gut-optimizing powerhouse. Start with cooled, roasted sweet potatoes, cubed or mashed, Add a spoon of kefir, plain yogurt, or sauerkraut on the side. Live cultures help seed beneficial microbes. Drizzle with extra virgin olive oil and a pinch of cinnamon. This boosts polyphenol content. Finish with a handful of raw leafy greens or microgreens. They provide chlorophyll and additional fiber to slow digestion and feed more bacterial strains. This isn't just about digestion. What's happening in your gut impacts how you think and feel. Studies from Harvard and the Weizmann Institute have shown that gut bacteria influence GABA and serotonin signaling, two key neurotransmitters for mood regulation, focus, and sleep. Have you ever noticed how your brain feels quieter after eating clean, whole food meals, and how reactive or foggy it gets after a heavy processed one? That's not just blood sugar. That's your gut-brain axis responding. So what's a simple behavioral tool you can implement this week? Try a gut bowl 3 to 4 times this week for lunch or dinner. Sweet potatoes, cool to reheated, greens, a probiotic-rich side like kimchi or yogurt, olive oil and cinnamon. Add legumes or salmon for protein, and you've got a complete microbiome-friendly meal. Consistency matters. Microbial shifts begin within 24 hours of a dietary change, but long-lasting diversity is built over weeks and months of feeding your gut the right signals. And here's the most empowering part. You don't need a supplement. You don't need a cleanse. You need real food, prepared in a way that honors the ancient relationship between your gut and your mind. One forkful at a time, you're not just feeding your body, you're shaping your resilience from the inside out. We often separate physical health from mental health. Muscles and bones over here, mood, memory, and focus over there. But neuroscience tells a different story. They're deeply interconnected, and the food choices you make at each meal ripple throughout your entire nervous system, including the parts of your brain that regulate attention, emotional regulation, and long-term memory. Sweet potatoes are not just good for your body, they are a neuroprotective tool, especially when consumed in the right context, with the right frequency, and as part of a rhythmically aligned daily pattern. Here's what the research shows. The nutrients found in sweet potatoes, including beta-carotene, potassium, manganese, vitamin C, and complex carbohydrates, support 3 key functions essential for brain performance. Neurotransmitter synthesis to B vitamins and carbohydrates, support the production of serotonin and dopamine, which regulate mood, motivation, and focus. Mitochondrial function to compounds like manganese and vitamin C support energy production within brain cells. Oxidative stress reduction to beta-carotene and anthocyanins act as antioxidants that protect neural tissue from age decline and environmental stress. In a 2022 observational study from Kyunghee University in South Korea, researchers found that adults over 55 who regularly consumed carotenoid-rich vegetables, including orange sweet potatoes, had significantly higher verbal memory scores and reduced cognitive fatigue compared to those who ate mostly refined grains. But the connection between sweet potatoes and mental clarity isn't just nutritional, it's metabolic. Stable glucose levels and steady insulin sensitivity directly impact how your brain regulates neurotransmitters. Sudden drops in blood sugar can impair prefrontal cortex activity, the area responsible for attention, impulse control, and emotional regulation. Have you noticed how mental fatigue often shows up mid-afternoon? Or how you feel more reactive, less patient when you've eaten a highly processed lunch? That's not a personality flaw, that's physiology. When you replace blood sugar spiking refined carbs with sweet potatoes, especially when cooled, reheated, and combined with fat and fiber, you provide your brain with a slow drip fuel source. That means more consistent energy, better focus, and improved emotional stability throughout the day. Here's a daily tool to enhance your cognitive performance. The focus-enhancing sweet potato snack midday or 90 minutes before deep work. Try half-cup cooled roasted sweet potato, mashed with a small spoonful of almond butter or tahini, sprinkled with cinnamon and sea salt. This blend offers complex carbs, brain-healthy fats, and steady-release glucose without the crash. This kind of snack supports acetylcholine production, the neurotransmitter associated with learning, memory, and sustained attention, especially when paired with choline-rich foods like eggs or dark leafy greens earlier in the day. And long-term, The antioxidants in sweet potatoes protect the brain against cumulative damage from oxidative stress, the kind that accelerates aging, memory loss, and neuroinflammation. One more tip: prepare your sweet potatoes in daylight hours. Aligning your carbohydrate intake with your circadian rhythm enhances metabolic efficiency. In other words, your brain uses food differently depending on the time of day. And a smartly timed sweet potato-based meal can leave you more mentally resilient, especially under stress. Here's the bigger truth. You don't need exotic supplements or extreme diets to support your mental edge. You need consistency, you need quality fuel, and you need to remember that the same habits that support your body support your brain. So ask yourself this: what if your next level of focus and emotional clarity isn't found in a productivity hack, but in a simple, nutrient-rich meal? Because when you nourish the brain intelligently, you don't just perform better, you feel better. You show up more grounded, more focused, more you. We've just unpacked the science of one of the most underestimated tools in your kitchen. Not a supplement, not a pill, but a deeply nutritious, neurologically active whole food, the sweet potato. What you've learned today isn't just about carbs or calories, it's about precision nourishment, a way of eating that honors your biology and helps you reshape your mood, your metabolism, your focus, and even your future. Let's recap the 6 science-backed insights. Resistant starch in cooled sweet potatoes activates gut bacteria that produce butyrate, a compound that fuels brain health, reduces inflammation, and improves insulin sensitivity. Anthocyanins and carotenoids in purple and orange varieties act as cellular antioxidants, protecting neurons and reducing age cognitive decline. Timing your intake around your circadian rhythm, especially before 3 p.m. or post-exercise, helps stabilize blood sugar and reduce cravings. Pairing sweet potatoes with protein and fat post-workout supports muscle glycogen recovery and balances cortisol for faster healing and strength gains. Combining with probiotic and polyphenol-rich foods transforms a simple meal into a gut healing protocol that enhances microbial diversity and mood regulation, supporting cognition, mood, and memory with steady, complex carbohydrates and antioxidant protection that reduce the cognitive drag of inflammation and glucose volatility. These aren't isolated facts. They're an integrated strategy, a way to feed your gut, your muscles, and your mind in one deliberate practice. No hype, no crash diets, just real food, real science, and real results. One bite at a time. Now here's the challenge. For the next 7 days, prepare sweet potatoes using one of the methods we discussed: cooled and reheated, roasted with the skin on, or paired with healthy fats and gut-friendly allies. Notice how your energy, focus, and digestion shift. Track your afternoons, observe your recovery, and pay attention to how your mind responds when your body is supported. It's often the smallest, most consistent habits that yield the biggest transformation. And it starts not in your supplements drawer, but in your fridge, in how you fuel your biology, with precision, with care, and with science. If this resonated with you, if you found a practical tool or an aha moment in today's video, I'd love for you to like this video, comment below with your favorite insight or recipe twist, and subscribe to join a growing community of people who want to think better, move better, and live more fully using neuroscience, psychology, and real-world behavior change. This channel exists to help you optimize your mind and body, not with gimmicks, but with grounded, proven tools. And sweet potatoes, they're just the beginning. Thanks for being here. Now go fuel your brain the smart way.